Welcome to a special broadcast of This Is Who We Are. My name is Steve Greenfield. Today's program, with apologies to Michael Moore, is called Rusbho And Me. The other day, I told my 11th grader that I had once been the subject of attack by Rush Limbaugh on his radio show, and that I was thinking of writing a social media post about it as a personal anti-eulogy. She appreciated hearing the story, but thought I shouldn't recount it in public. I asked her why, assuming it was one of those, "Dad, you're embarrassing me," teenage kind of things. But that wasn't it at all. She said, "It feels like the kind of thing that could get you shot." That's Rush Limbaugh's legacy. My daughter had never heard any talk like that from me. But she's grown up in the 21st century, and that's the America she's absorbed on her own. Just as when I was a boy, I'd absorbed from school and the news that there could be nuclear war at any time, my kids have grown up believing that criticism of the white resentment industry could produce assassination. I almost feel like that should be the end of the eulogy. What more need be said? By the force of his grating voice and the billions of dollars in endorsement funding by the titans of industry that propelled it for 35 years, America has become a place where a child grows into adulthood thinking that a public recounting of how one came to attract his ire could cause assassination, that's just normal in America. Being of a certain age, my mind went right back to Denver radio personality Alan Berg, who was ambushed and killed by white supremacists in 1984. That was the same year Rush Limbaugh started his radio program in Sacramento. 4 years later, he was brought to New York and national reach, not by some shadowy white supremacist shortwave system, not by Rupert Murdoch, but by ABC. He was given the reach to change the course of American social and political relations and to move the Republican Party into an ever-increasingly reality-denying, bigotry-centered, violence-promoting white supremacist force from which the executives and investors of ABC made billions of dollars over the next 15 years. Rush Limbaugh becoming a national figure was a creation of the liberal media. So was Donald Trump, who was turned from a limited market butt of New York City humor as our most mocked society figure to a national icon by NBC in 2004, the same year Limbaugh had accumulated enough money and power to self-produce and syndicate. He was thereafter carried by Clear Channel, the massive near monopoly on radio stations, concert venues, and billboards, now known as iHeartRadio. The local station that picked him up where I live was a Clear Channel outlet. That's been missing from the conversation, but it's the most important part. Limbaugh was taken nationwide by ABC, and he and his mainstream corporate sponsors made them and him rich. All those horrible things he said and did over all that time that everyone's been recalling this week, they were done for profit by ABC. He was just the talent. His job was to bring them money, not to bring the audience enlightenment. Rush is dead, but ABC is still here, and they and the rest of the liberal media gave Trump a couple of $1 billion in free airtime in 2015 and 16, all of them giving the same reason that stood for Limbaugh. He got ratings. When the equally hateful white supremacist Megyn Kelly started getting attention, who bid her out of her niche market at Fox and brought her to the general public? NBC. They took a notorious white supremacist and rebranded her a feminist icon, and all the major corporate accounts came along. I can't get to the story about my personal encounter with being the subject of a Rush Limbaugh show until we fully process that. If I am in danger, it's not because of the Klan or the National Alliance or Newsmax or Fox. It's because of the liberal media and the consumer product corporations that pay them for access to the ears and eyes in all the cars and living rooms of America. It's a holistic system. It doesn't matter which party a network tends to support. There is no liberal media. There is only for-profit media, including our pretensive public media, which is bankrolled by wealthy foundations and can never present content that the masters of those revenue streams would find threatening to their business of accumulating those revenues. Money talks, and man, did Rush Limbaugh ever talk. Jesus is Jesus, but business is business. Business counts beans, not bodies. If I were to get killed, the networks would report it and cut to commercial without giving a penny to my wife and kids. What my daughter fears is nothing more to them than the usual way of making money. That's the real story of my brush with Rushness. It's not personal. It's just business. Now for the specifics. In late 2004, a station in my area converted to the 24-hour hate radio format. We hadn't had one of those before, so I listened to it now and then. And the marquee show was, of course, Rush Limbaugh. One day, I was startled to hear a commercial from my town's movie theater declaring that while they regret they can't bring back the days of the family fare of John Wayne, patrons could count on never finding a Michael Moore movie at the theater, so listeners should reward the theater by buying books of 10 tickets to give as Christmas presents. So egregious was this marketing plan, obviously designed with the particular audience Limbaugh attracts in mind, probably expecting nobody else was listening, that at first I wasn't sure if I'd heard it right. I popped a tape in the deck and kept the station on until I heard it again and captured it. At that moment, by virtue of being the de facto secretary of the New Paltz Greens, which had developed some ratings power of our own through the election in May 2003 of Mayor Jason West and Deputy Mayor Rebecca Rotzler as the first Greens ever elected in New York, and Jason's history-making same-sex weddings in February of 2004, and some subsequent public nastiness through Jerry Falwell and Fred Phelps focused on our community, I had some access to the Mid-Hudson press. We were newsworthy. I approached Rebecca, who is Native American and a survivor of the genocide the movie theater was celebrating as family values, and proposed a boycott of the theater in pursuit of one simple demand: drop the ad. She agreed to join with me in announcing the boycott and distributing leaflets outside the theater. The local dailies did cover the press release I sent out. In short order, one of their stories was posted on Michael Moore's website. I suppose someone working for him in the job of checking LexisNexis every day for mentions of Moore noticed, and someone approved putting the story on his website. But in equally short order, since the article mentioned the ad had run on Rush Limbaugh's show, I suppose someone in the same position for Rush noticed and brought it to his attention. So Rush did a show attacking me. He was not alone. Mark Levin was even worse, and there were a few others. But for Rush, it was personal, a cause, because his name was in the article. He referred to me as a long-haired, dope-smoking, maggot-infested FM radio type, and proposed that he would bring a Dan's Bake Sale to New Paltz to show us what for. I Googled that and found out it referred to an event in which he'd brought tens of thousands of his ditto heads. Yes, they called themselves that with pride, to Fort Collins, Colorado, to support a local small business. As we'd already overcome Jerry Falwell's law firm and a visit from the Westboro Baptist Church family, to tell you the truth, I was in full bring-it-on mode. So the next day, I tried calling into the show. After a period of busy signals, I got through to a screener. He wanted to know what I wanted to talk about, so I said, that story about the theater boycott in New Paltz that runs an ad on Rush's program. He asked me for my name, and I said, Steve Greenfield, the guy leading the boycott. I'd love to talk to Rush if he's up to that. Tell him you've got the guy on the phone. At the very least, I thought it was reasonable for the audience to know that this boycott was called by a short-haired, stone-cold sober Eagle Scout and volunteer firefighter, the kind of person his audience looks up to, a properly credentialed real American. Needless to say, I was put on hold for a minute and then disconnected. That's how it is with bullies, from the schoolyard to the halls of establishment power. This powerful man, in control of the political party that was running the country, making $20 million per year, couldn't get on the phone with some guy in a town of 13,000 and debate the issue. I was too scary for him to risk even one of his blind worshippers. Nor did Dan's Bake Sale 2 ever materialize. Rush probably nodded out on pills and forgot about it. Of course, for me, it wasn't quite done. Now that the story was in front of Rush's audience, it got to the white supremacist underground, which had previously identified me as the Jewish puppet master behind Jason's affront against Jesus. I was again featured on the Stormfront website, this time under the headline, "The Arrogant Jew Steve Greenfield Added Again in New Paltz." It'll come right up if you Google that. Again, as with Rush's radio attack, my name and location given out in a market rife with violence-prone extremists. The local National Alliance organizer who posted it did not kill me. He did kill his wife and himself. And that's the problem with the Rush Limbaughs of the world, or more specifically, the profiteers that sell them. Thanks to our media business model, so vast is the listening radius that the message only has to be insightful enough to one unhinged person. And with a population that big, the odds that at least one will hear it are quite high. That's how someone ended up coming down to a Washington pizzeria with an assault rifle. That's how the riot happened at the Capitol. And that's why my daughter thinks a social media post could get me killed. But if we accede to that, it wins without firing a shot. What needs to be said must always be said, or else the only people saying things are the Rush Limbaughs, with nobody standing in their way. No, our mainstream institutions do not stand in their way. They are not the bulwark against fascism behind which we must rally for our own survival. Our mainstream institutions, our so-called liberal institutions, are their biggest platforms. It is the institutions, not the individuals, that are fascist. Rush Limbaugh isn't dead. Stop circulating the obituaries. He is alive and well and more powerful than ever in our ratings-driven, for-profit politics, consumer products, wars, and media. Think about that. Talk it over with your friends, and let's see if there's something we can all do together to stop it. Thanks for listening. My name is Steve Greenfield.